Hey, it's Nootsie, and today we're going to kick over some more sacred cows. I'm not sure if you've ever heard this saying or not, but I think it epitomizes someone who is very dogmatic in their opinions and their beliefs, especially when it pertains to philosophy and religion. And it goes something like this. They are willing to swallow an entire camel, yet they will strain a small gnat. And I think the reason that I love that saying so much is because that's the kind of person that I was until I ran headlong into an encounter with the divine. And I think as Christians, we go down this road to an extreme amount at times. To give you a perfect example is we're not afraid of the scary looking Easter bunny. We'll put our kids on the Easter bunny's lap, even though it is very scary to them and it causes them to cry, but we won't even look into what this image of the Eye of Horus could really mean. And the Eye of Horus can be referred to as the all-seeing eye, or the third eye, or the pineal gland. It can even be symbolized as the pine cone. And I'm not here to wreck anybody's Easter because I so love to make Easter baskets and put all the little trinkets in there and fill the Easter egg with goodies. And I enjoy Easter candy, and I think it is amazing to have these traditions where we celebrate and have time with our family and friends. But what in the world does the Easter bunny have to do with the resurrection of Christ? Actually, I have been accused of being a pagan or into pagan worship since I've been doing these videos on why I left Christianity to follow after Christ. And a bunny symbolizes the goddess of fertility. And we're afraid of the Eye of Horus. So spoiler alert, the Eye of Horus is actually just a cross-sectional slice or cross-sectional view of the brain with the pineal gland highlighted. So we're gonna look at why is the pineal gland important and what is its function, and why do they call it the third eye? And what are the benefits of the pineal gland? And how can we use it to benefit ourselves, mind, body, and spirit? So let's just get right into part 5 of why I left Christianity to follow after Christ and to really experience the love of the Almighty. In order for us to not be camel swallowers and gnat strainers, we need to understand what the definition of critical thinking is, and I'm going to provide you a lot of information and then also the resources for you to ferret it out on your own. But for our baseline understanding, critical thinking can be defined as intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, synthesizing, and evaluating information gathered or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to beliefs and action. And so the pineal gland is actually part of our endocrine system. And our endocrine system is the body's different hormones, and they regulate all biological processes. So I want to start out with showing you just a short clip of a scientist explaining what exactly is the pineal gland and its function.
So in summation, what can we say is the function of the pineal gland? We can say the function of the pineal gland is to do what? To secrete melatonin. And what does that melatonin do? It regulates our sleep and wake cycle so it regulates what's called our diurnal cycle, or our sleep and wake cycle, via who? The suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is located in the hypothalamus. That's the whole purpose here. And what's stimulating this process of the pineal gland to make melatonin? This is stimulated by darkness. Okay, so darkness is one of the primary stimuli of the pineal gland, right? Via all this intracellular, all these actual other signals, right? But again, biggest overall concept to get out of this is that darkness works through different mechanisms to stimulate the pineal gland, to release melatonin, and that melatonin regulates your sleep and wake cycles by acting on the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And what does the suprachiasmatic nucleus do? It resets our biological clock through various complex mechanisms to help induce the actual drowsiness and trying to get you're getting sleepy, right? To be able to induce the sleeping process, right?
So to put it in layman's terms, the retina senses light, and then the brain secretes hormones of serotonin and it wakes us up. And then when the retina senses darkness, the pineal gland turns that serotonin into melatonin and it makes us sleepy. But the great thing about melatonin is it has tremendous antioxidant properties without having to have receptors. And by the nature of us being air breathers or breathing in oxygen, we can rust on the inside. And antioxidants then go in and shine up all of the inner parts in our body. Why then is the pineal gland, this pine cone shaped tiny gland that if you were going to locate it, it would be between the eyes in the middle of the brain, called the third eye? It's really not mysterious or spooky or even complex. It is because just like the retina, this tiny little gland has photoreceptors, rods, and cones. That's basically it. And I don't know why throughout antiquity this is something that has been known. No one knows for sure, but if you look at Egyptian art, the Eye of Horus, the third eye, is highlighted in much of their artwork. The same thing throughout Sumeria. They're always holding a pine cone. And then even if you look at the Vatican, don't you think it's kind of funny that they have a huge statue of a pine cone out in front of it? Well, the pine cone is a symbol of inner light or enlightenment. And isn't that what we want as followers of Christ? To be full of light, to be a city set upon a hill? And it really does change our perspective of scriptures if you look at it in this regard. Like Matthew 6:22 says, well, Jesus said that if your eye, not your eyes, but your eye be single, then your whole body be filled with light. And then it goes on to say the eye is the lamp of the body. Because the pineal gland and its production of serotonin and melatonin and its photoreceptor rods and cones anchors us down into our circadian rhythm, our wake and sleep cycles, it really does affect our overall health on our mind, our body, and our soul level. There are some 50 to 70 million people that suffer with sleep disorders. And anybody who's ever suffered with insomnia, you can ask them if they wish they could be asleep during the dark and awake during the light. So it really does affect our overall health. And I have talked a lot about it in the videos where I talk about brain waves and breath work, and especially the spine and the spirit series, because there is a scientist that I found it really interesting. He likens it to if you are using a bathroom or a toilet in your house over and over and over again and not flushing the toilet, that is similar to what happens in the brain when we aren't sleeping appropriately. Those brain cells don't have an opportunity to shrink and allow that cerebral spinal fluid to get in every nook and cranny and wash out that debris and bring the much needed nutrients to the brain. So those low brain waves, the theta and the delta brain waves, they have big waves because they're slow, and so they wash over the brain and they really begin to have those neurons sync up together. So when we're awake, there's a ton of electricity and electrical activity, but when we are sleeping, then the neurons can begin to fire in tandem together, and they actually look like they're dancing, or like this beautiful piece of music where they're flowing together. Specifically, REM sleep or delta brainwave sleep, or even if you can get there through meditation, is considered the body's emotional first aid. Reason being is when we are in REM sleep or delta brain waves, no matter how you get there, what happens is the body is not able to produce the chemicals associated with stress. But what's really cool is our emotional centers and our memory centers are reactivated, and that's where dreaming comes in. And there is a world-renowned researcher, scientist, Dr. Matt Walker, who has an analogy that I think is really valuable, and I'm going to paraphrase it for you here. He says that what happens when we are sleeping and we are in delta brain waves, the experiences that we are replaying in our REM sleep are like an orange, and then the rind of the orange is the bitter part, or the emotional part, or the hurt, anger, frustration part of that experience. And during this emotional first aid, that part of the orange is removed. And so then when we wake up in the morning, the jagged, sharp edges are diminished or totally gone. And there is sort of a divorce, so to speak, from the emotions and the memory. And then those soothing neurochemicals are a bath for the brain. And so it's kind of a good news, bad news scenario, because we all know that memories can be saved like a Word document. They can either come back to haunt us, or they can come back up to make us happy. But just like a Word document, the really good news is we can go in and edit those emotional memories, and we can take away that bitter rind, or those jabbing emotions that would stab us in the heart or stab us in the back or make us frustrated and angry. And we can change all that, and we can even change the outcome. And I'm going to begin to talk about it a little bit in upcoming videos, but I do want to mention it here. We can use this tool in a daydreaming state. It doesn't have to be used only when we are sleeping. So you can see then how important the pineal gland is, and how important the serotonin and melatonin and biological clock is really effective for helping us to be healthy on an emotional level, a mental level, a physiological level, and a spiritual level. And you can really understand why the scriptures talk about we should be able to see vision and dream dreams. Talks about it in Acts and in Joel. And what I think is really interesting is in Genesis 30:32, Jacob says, "I will name this place Peniel, because this is where I met God face to face." And so from a spiritual perspective, the night season is really important, or the darkness is really important, and we can begin to use it with intention. That's why God ordained for a third of our day to be where we are sleeping. And God talks about in the scriptures where he sings or he vibrates over us in the night season. And then also in Genesis it talks about in the darkness God moved or brooded over the waters. And that's where he created life. Well, we are 60% water, and some people believe we are up to 90% water if you include the intracellular water. But you know, it says that a wise man will give thoughts to his step, and a simple man will believe everything. And we have been given the faculty of critical thinking, but one of the things that is vitally important that springs directly out of being able to have a well-functioning circadian rhythm with serotonin and melatonin is creativity. Our creativity is fueled by our imagination. And these faculties are gifts given to us because we are created in the image of the Almighty, who is the ultimate creator and the ultimate force of creativity and imagination. And we have the sovereign right to use it however we will. The problem is we end up, many of us, just using it to focus on all the bad things that we have done, or forecasting the worst case scenario, or mishaps or events that have hurt us traumatically, instead of using it as a power to bring into our lives that which we can imagine and create. Our powers of imagination are really quite astounding and really quite divine. If you look at it, we can take random images and couple them together and create something in our mind that we have never seen before. For example, you can imagine a dolphin and then think of it balancing a pineapple on its nose. Now, that's not something you've seen before, but that's something that we can use our imagination to create in our mind. Or we can think of a duck with a hat on, or even a horse on a surfboard. That's because we have the creative force of imagination flowing to us and through us. And you can look around you right where you're sitting or standing, and you can see all kinds of things that started out in the imagination of a person, like the Wright brothers or Steve Jobs. But whether it be a television or an iPad or a cell phone or furniture or a piece of artwork or exercise equipment, no matter what it is, it all started in the imagination of an individual. And we can use those powers to build anything that we want in our life. That's what highly successful people do. They decide what they want, and then they block everything else out, and they act like the person that they are trying to become. And that's why I think it's so vitally important that we cast down any vain imagination or any kind of thought that would try to rise up that is in contradiction to the vision of what we want to create. It's not something that anyone else can do for you. It is something that you must do on your own. And you have to have a specific vision. You have to be focused and detailed of what you want, and anything that is contrary to that, you block it out and you keep the vision of what you do want front and center. And I love how William Blake recontextualized it by saying it is the actor's technique. We want to or need to act like the person that we want to become. And how do we do that? In our imagination. The problem is we get so rooted and grounded in our sensory perception or the mind of the body. And if we are only focused on what we can see and hear and taste and smell and touch, we're really no better than our four-footed friends or pets that we have at home. We're not using the faculties that we have been gifted. We have been given the prefrontal cortex. We have critical thinking and intuition and reasoning, and we have imagination. We have been gifted the ability to take a vision, keep it front and center, block out everything else, and we can create whatever it is that we are holding in our heart and in our mind that we want to bring into fruition. We are created in God's image. We are given that faculty for just such a task as this. We can use it to build things. We can use it to bless people. We can use it to enjoy the kind of life that we want to create. Most people are just trying to safely get to death so they can get their reward, which is really kind of sad. You know, it's like we say, oh, don't do that, we might die. Or, oh, don't look at that, it might be spooky. When in reality, we should be living large and using our imagination to create the things that we truly desire in our life. It makes me think of that song that goes, who's knock, knock, knocking at the door? Somebody is ringing the bell. Will you do me a favor and answer the door? Because we're promised if we knock on the door will be answered. And so we must knock on the door of our imagination and use the gifts that we have been given to create the life that we want to live. And so we have to employ this force of creativity. No one will be able to do it for us. And it is not a respecter of persons. No one person is more creative than another. We've all been given this gift. It's just how we choose to use it. Some people choose to use it to create and build and to have creativity be in full force in their life to make beautiful things. Many of us just have it on default and we use it instead of to bless and to build and enjoy, we use it to tear down and destroy. It really is our choice. So it comes down to asking ourselves, how do we want to live? What is it that we want to have in our life? And then block everything else out and hold that vision front and center with dogged determination, and our imagination will bring it into fruition. Because it truly is not a respecter of persons. It's about exercising and cultivating our imagination on a daily basis. It's about making beautiful images, specific images of the things that you want in your life and holding on to those things and living according to that. I love what one person said, our imagination is our internal nation that we must activate, we must cultivate, and we must build. We think some 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and most of them are on repeat. That's why we must take control and cultivate ideas and visions and images of the life that we want to live. We need to write it down. We need to write the vision upon the table so that when we read it, we can run. We need to clip images and put them in a book. We need to make a mind movie, because when we think a thought, or when we pull up an image, or when we replay something that has happened to us in our life, it creates chemistry. And then that chemistry dictates how we view our life. So if you think happy thoughts or thoughts of gratitude, it creates a certain kind of chemistry in your body, which enables you to see life in a different way. If you think thoughts of trauma and drama and fear and anger, it creates a different kind of chemistry, and then you see things differently. It is by our own hand. And so if we want to see changes in our life, we need to think different thoughts that cause different effects in our body. So now you can see why throughout antiquity the pineal gland has played an important role. Because if we are not rooted and grounded in the serotonin melatonin cycle, then we can't dream dreams and we can't see visions, and we do have a toxic buildup in our brain, and it's very difficult to use our imagination and our creative force that we have been given by the Creator, the One, the Divine, the Almighty. I love that song that goes, "It was just my imagination running away with me." And I think that's really what we need to create in our life. We need to create these images with our imagination and just run away with those and allow those things to be manifested in our life, because we do have this divine creative energy flowing to us and through us, and we get to decide how we use it. So I would love to hear from you. I'm hoping that this resonated. It is such a powerful tool. So please make a comment or share it if you know someone that you think this would be valuable for. But until next time, I'm believing that your imagination is going to run away with you, and you are going to create beautiful images in your mind, and be blessed.